Picture the largest inhabited castle on Earth. 900 rooms, 300 fireplaces, a stone fortress that has been standing for almost 800 years, crowning a chalk hill above the River Thames. Now fill it with silence. Not the ordinary silence of night, but a silence that has been ordered. A silence enforced by a widow in black who rules a quarter of the human race and cannot bear the sound of laughter in her own corridors. Add servants who walk in felt slippers so their footsteps make no noise. Add a dead man's room where hot water is carried up every single evening, where his clothes are laid out fresh on the bed, where his watch is wound, as if he might walk in at any moment and dress for dinner. He has been dead for a year. The water is still carried. Add gaslight turned down to a blue whisper. Corridors 200 yards long lit by single lamps, and a queen who wanders them at 2 a.m. because she cannot sleep in the bed where her husband died beside her. That's Windsor Castle in the 1860s. The grandest royal residence in the world and the loneliest. A place where you could serve the most powerful woman alive and be dismissed forever for letting her see your face. We're going back there tonight. Not as tourists gawking up at the round tower from the long walk. We're living it. One servant on the night staff through the darkest years the castle ever knew. Everything she would have seen, smelled, heard, carried, and survived. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I still have no idea whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just lying in the dark enjoying tales of coal scuttles, corpse candles, and a queen who talked to a painting. Either way, subscribe if you want, get comfortable. Here we go. The can of hot water weighs 11 pounds and the handle is cutting a white groove across your fingers, and if you spill one drop on the carpet of this corridor, the head housemaid has promised you, in a whisper, in the dark, that you will be on the carrier's cart back to your village by Friday. That is the situation. It is 9:30 at night, the 9th of December, 1861, and you are carrying hot water to a room where a man is dying, through a castle that is pretending with all 900 of its rooms that nothing is wrong. Your name is Eliza Turner. You're 17 years old. You've been at Windsor Castle for 9 weeks, and for 8 of those weeks you believed you'd made the greatest step upward any girl from your village had ever made. Your mother cried when the letter came. 3rd housemaid at the castle. £12 a year, tea and sugar found, a black stuff dress that the castle itself provided the pattern for, and your name entered in a ledger by the master of the household's office as if you were a fact of the British state, which, in a small way, you now are. This 9th week is different. This 9th week the castle smells of something underneath the beeswax and the coal smoke and the cold stone. You noticed it 4 days ago on the grand corridor side and you could not name it, and then old Mrs. Hedge, who's been keeping the housemaid's closet on the upper floor since King William's time, named it for you without being asked. Sickness, she said. Somewhere in the private apartments there is a sick room, and no amount of vinegar and no amount of shut doors keeps a sick room from telling the whole house. The man in the sick room is Prince Albert, the Prince Consort, the Queen's husband. He is 42 years old, and the doctors has been saying for a fortnight that it is a feverish cold, and then that it is gastric fever, which is the polite name, the drawing-room name. The scullery name, the name whispered over the plate scrubbing at midnight, is typhoid. The same fever that empties whole streets in the towns. The same fever your own uncle died of, in a cottage with a mud floor, and here it is in a castle with 300 fireplaces, because fever has never once in its life checked whose drains it was climbing out of. You are not carrying the water to the prince. You would never be allowed within 3 closed doors of the prince. You are carrying it to the king's room in the private apartment service passage, where it will be taken from you by an upper servant, who will hand it to a page, who will hand it to someone whose face you have never seen, and somewhere at the end of that chain of hands a doctor will wring out a cloth in it and lay it on the forehead of the second most important person in the empire. Your part is 11 pounds of water and a corridor, and the absolute requirement that you be invisible while doing it. Stop for a moment and understand what invisible means here, because it is not a manner of speaking, it is a written rule. Housemaids at Windsor work at hours when the family will not see them, and if by accident a member of the royal family enters a corridor while you're in it, you do not curtsy, you do not greet, you do not look. You turn and face the wall. You stand with your eyes on the stone and your hands still, and you wait, breathing as quietly as you can until the footsteps have passed. A housemaid was sent away the year before you came, they say, not for theft, not for insolence, but because the Queen had begun to recognise her. Think about that. Her offence was being seen twice. So you walk the service passage with your 11 pounds of water, felt slippers over your boots, and the water shifts its weight against the tin sides of the can with a soft, heavy slosh at every step. And the handle grinds the same groove across your fingers, and you count doors in the near dark, because counting doors is how you navigate a corridor where the gas has been turned down to a bead of blue. 4th door, 5th. The 6th has a strip of lamplight underneath it and a smell coming through the crack that stops you for half a second. Brandy. Beef tea. And under those, sweetish and wrong, the sick-room smell, the one Mrs. Hedge named. Your uncle's cottage smelled like that in his last week. You know this smell in your body before your mind will admit to knowing it. The door opens before you can set the can down. A woman in grey, one of the upper servants, her face the colour of candle tallow, takes the water from you without a word. Behind her, for 1 second, you see a slice of the room beyond the service lobby. A screen. The corner of a bed that has been moved, because sick beds get moved into the light. A man's dressing gown over a chair. Then the door is shut softly, the way every door in this wing is shut now. Softly, softly. And you are alone in the passage with your empty can and your aching fingers, and the certain knowledge, arrived all at once like cold water down the back, that the prince consort is going to die. You're not supposed to know that. Nobody in the castle is supposed to know that. The bulletins posted for the household say the prince passed a restless night, but that there are no unfavourable symptoms. The Queen herself, they say, has forbidden the word danger. And yet the whole castle knows it the way a body knows weather, through the skin, through 100 small signals. The chapel choir practised yesterday and was told quietly to stop. The kitchens have been sending up arrowroot and brandy at strange hours. Mr. Frost, the steward's room footman, was seen coming down the private stairs on Saturday with his lips pressed together so hard they'd gone white. And the Prince of Wales was sent for. Bertie, the heir, summoned by telegram from Cambridge in the middle of the night. You heard that from the girl who heard it from the boy who carries coals to the equerry's rooms. When they send for the heir, Mrs. Hedge said, and then did not finish the sentence, and put 3 lumps of sugar in your tea instead of 2, which from Mrs. Hedge is an embrace. You go back down the passage with the empty can. It bangs once against your knee, tin on bone, and the sound in that silence is like a gunshot, and you freeze with your heart slamming and wait, and nothing happens. No door opens, no voice comes, and you walk on with the can held out from your body at arm's length, your shoulder burning, because you would rather your arm come off than make that sound twice. This is your life now. Remember how you got here, because on nights like this you need to remember. You came in October on the carrier's cart from a village 11 miles off, with a tin box holding 2 shifts, 1 Sunday dress, a Bible from the rector's wife, and a paper of pins your mother pressed into your hand at the last moment as if pins were courage. The castle appeared over the fields an hour before you reached it, grey and enormous on its hill, and it did not get closer so much as it got taller, until the cart rolled up Thames Street under walls that leaned over you like a held breath, and you understood for the first time that you were going to live inside a thing that had been old when the oldest church in your village was new. They took you in through the lower ward, past the guardroom, down steps worn into hollows by boots, into a world underneath the world. Because that is what the servants' Windsor is. It is a second castle, buried inside the first. Kitchens with ceilings 30 feet high, built in the 14th century, where the fires have not gone fully cold in 500 years. Passages cut through the medieval walls, some of them 10 feet thick so that a maid can cross from one wing to another without once crossing a floor that a royal foot might touch. Storerooms, lamp rooms, a confectionery, a pastry kitchen, a room whose entire purpose is the cleaning of oil lamps, hundreds of them, and another whose entire purpose is candles. There are around 600 servants attached to this castle in one way or another. 600. Your entire village, church, and all is 340 souls. You've moved into a town, and the town is inside a building, and the building belongs to one small woman you've never seen. Your place in the town is precise. 3rd housemaid, upper floors, assigned to the night and early duties, under Mrs. Fry, the head housemaid, under the housekeeper, Mrs. Bland, under the master of the household, under God. Your working day begins at 5 in the morning in the dark and ends when Mrs. Fry says it ends. Your hands, which were farm hands, hard already at 17, have in 9 weeks acquired a whole new geography of hurt. The knuckles crack from soda water. There is a burn scar starting on the left wrist from a careless grate. The pads of the fingers have gone smooth and shiny from blacklead, which no amount of scrubbing entirely removes, so that you go to chapel on Sunday with faint grey ghosts on your fingertips, the mark of your trade, the way a miner carries coal in the seams of his skin. Blacklead. Let me explain blacklead, because your mornings are built out of it. Every fireplace in use must be cleaned and blackened before the family rises. You kneel on a folded cloth on the hearth in the dark, 5:30 in the morning, the room around you, the temperature of a cellar, and you rake yesterday's ash into a pail, trying to make no dust because dust settles on furniture, and furniture tells on you. The cinders that are still good are sifted out because waste is a sin here, in the richest household on earth. Waste is a sin. Then the blacklead itself, a paste of graphite worked into the iron with one brush, worked again with a second, then polished with a third until the grate shines like wet slate. Your arms ache by the 3rd fireplace. By the 8th, your shoulders have a hot wire running through them. You do as many as a dozen before breakfast, moving from room to room through the dark with your housemaid's box, 9 pounds of brushes and leads and cloths, and the castle around you utterly silent except for the wind flattening itself against 100 windows, and, on the quarter hours, the bell in the curfew tower dropping its notes down through the cold. And here is what nobody told you before you came. the thing you had to learn with your own body. Windsor Castle is cold. Not cold like a poor house is cold from want. Cold on principle. Cold by royal command. The Queen believes hot rooms are unwholesome, believes it with the full force of her character, and so the corridors are kept at a chill that makes visiting ministers put on 2 undershirts, and the fires in many rooms are lit late and kept small, and there are ladies of the household, real ladies, with titles who have been known to sit in the evening with fur cloaks over their court dress, and their feet on hot water bottles hidden under the table. You, of course, get no hot water bottle. You get the attic dormitory under the leads, 4 beds, 3 other girls, 1 small grate you're permitted to light for 1 hour on winter evenings, and a window whose glass is so old it has gone thick at the bottom like poured honey, and through which the wind finds its way regardless, thin as a knife blade, all night. You share your bed with no one, which after the stories your cousin told you about farm service feels like wealth, but you share the room's air with Annie, who talks in her sleep, arguments with her sister that her sister will never hear, and with Patience, who is from Devon and cries sometimes quietly, face in the bolster, homesick, and with Rose, who has been here 4 years and sleeps like the dead and says the castle is the best place in England if you keep your eyes down and your mouth shut and your hands where the ledger can see them. Rose is the one who taught you the walls, which is to say, she taught you how to survive. Face the wall, she said, your first week standing you in the corridor and playing the part of a duchess sweeping by. Not slow, not sudden. Turn, face the stone, eyes down, hands quiet. You're not hiding. Hiding looks guilty. You're becoming furniture. Furniture is safe. Furniture keeps its place for 40 years and gets a pension. She rapped the wall beside your head with 1 red knuckle. Learn to love this stone, she said. This stone is your best friend in the whole castle. It will never ask you a question, and it will never carry a tale. You have learned to love the stone. In 9 weeks you have faced it perhaps a dozen times, twice for ladies in waiting whose skirts hissed past like weather. Once for a whole procession of gentlemen after a council meeting. Boots and low voices and 1 man smelling of cigars so strongly the smell stayed in the corridor for an hour. And once, 3 weeks ago, before the sickness, for a man and a woman walking slowly, talking quietly in German, and you stood with your nose 4 inches from the stone and your heart going like a rabbit, because German in this castle at that hour in that corridor could only be 2 people, and one of them wore a dress whose silk you heard the way you hear water, and the other had a slow, even, tired step, and a low voice that paused often, patiently, in the middle of sentences, as if the thoughts were heavy and had to be set down carefully. You never saw their faces. You saw stone and your own breath on it. But you heard the Queen of England laugh once softly at something her husband said, a small private laugh, the laugh of a wife and not a sovereign, and then the footsteps faded through the double doors, and Rose says you must forget you heard it, and you have tried, and you cannot. That was 3 weeks ago. Nobody in the castle has heard that laugh since. The days since your night with the water can go by like a held breath. The 10th of December, the 11th. The bulletins say the prince maintains his strength. The kitchens say otherwise because the kitchens read the trays. A sick man's trays come back down, and what has been touched and what has not been touched is a bulletin no doctor writes and no newspaper prints, and the trays are coming back barely touched. Beef tea, tried. Brandy, taken. Everything else, no. Mrs. Hedge reads the trays like a gypsy reading leaves and says nothing at all now, which is the worst thing Mrs. Hedge can say. On the 13th, a Friday, you're sent at dusk with 2 other maids to make up bedrooms in the Lancaster Tower for family arriving suddenly, and from the tower stair window you see something you will remember all your life. Below, in the December murk, the gas lamps of the town of Windsor are being lit one by one down Thames Street. Ordinary lights of an ordinary Friday, shops and public houses, and between the castle and the town there is nothing but 300 yards of cold air, and yet you understand, looking down, that the distance cannot be crossed. Down there they are weighing out sugar and pulling pints and scolding children. Up here 600 people are moving on tiptoe around one closed door. 2 worlds, 1 gaslight apart. And the town does not know yet. The whole empire does not know yet. For one more day, the news that will put half the world into black cloth exists only up here, on this hill, behind these walls, as a smell in a corridor and an untouched tray. That night you cannot sleep. The wind has swung round to the north and the castle is making its night noises, which you have learned the way you once learned the noises of your parents' house. The tick of cooling iron in the grates, the mutter of the flues, Rose breathing, Annie arguing softly with her absent sister, and underneath it all, something new tonight, or something you've only now grown able to hear. Doors. Far away, on the private side, doors opening and closing at midnight, at 1, at 2. Softly, softly. Nobody shuts doors at 2 in the morning in a house where all is well. Saturday the 14th of December, 1861. You will be asked about this day for the rest of your life, at village firesides by grandchildren, and you will always tell it the same way, because it happened to you the same way, in pieces, through walls, from below. The morning is almost ordinary. That is the first strange thing. You blacklead your grates in the dark, you carry your cans, you sweep the grand corridor carpet on your knees, with tea leaves scattered to lay the dust, damp leaves, swept up again with a hand-brush, yard by yard, 200 yards of it, the smell of cold tea and wool filling your head. The bulletin that morning admits, at last, in careful words, that the prince is in a most critical state. The castle reads it in silence. Nobody says the other word. Everybody carries it. At midday the strange hush deepens. Orders come down that there is to be no unnecessary noise anywhere in the upper ward. A footman is posted to stop the tradesmen's carts from coming up the hill, and straw, they say, has been asked about for the roadway under the private apartments. Straw to muffle wheels, the old custom for a dying house. In the great kitchen, where the spits and the coppers usually make a noise like a small foundry, the cooks work as if under water. You're given evening tasks far from the private wing, and you are glad, and you are ashamed of being glad. But at 10 o'clock at night it is you, Mrs. Fry, taps on the shoulder. You and Rose, because the family have come in numbers and the audience room and 2 others must have their fires kept in all night, and the regular arrangements have dissolved, and everything is hands now, any hands, your hands. So you're inside the state apartments, on the public side of the wall that divides splendour from grief, kneeling at a grate with a scuttle of best coals, building the fire quiet, laying each lump by hand rather than pouring, one lump another, black dust working into the cracks of your fingers, when the wall itself begins to tell you what is happening on the other side of it. Footsteps, many of them, overhead and beyond, moving in one direction. A door, another door, then a long stillness, 20 minutes, half an hour, in which the coals you laid catch and flutter and the flames make the only sound in the world. Rose kneels at the next grate, not working, just kneeling, her head bent as if in church. You find you are counting your own heartbeats. You have no reason to count them. You count them. And then, at close to 11, a sound comes through the walls of Windsor Castle that you will never be able to describe properly to anyone who was not in the building, though you will try for 60 years. It is not a scream. Screams are in stories. It is a cry. One woman's cry, muffled by 2 floors and God knows how many feet of stone into something almost like a note of music. One note, rising and cut off. And then doors again, many doors and hurrying feet that no longer trouble to be quiet. And somewhere a bell rung hard, and Rose reaches over from her hearth to yours, and grips your blackened hand with her blackened hand and holds it. And that is how you learn that Albert, Prince Consort, has died. Not from any bulletin, from one note through stone and another servant's hand, and the fires you had just built for a household that from this minute forward will be in mourning for the rest of your working life. He died at 11:15 in the Blue Room, with the Queen kneeling at his side, holding his hand, and their children around the bed. You learn the details later, in the servants' hall over the next days, the way servants learn everything sideways. That the Queen had been called back in from the next room, that she asked him for one kiss, in the German of their private life, and he moved his lips, that when it was over she was carried out more than lead, that the Prince of Wales, who had quarrelled with his father and been quarrelled over, stood at the foot of the bed and could not stop shaking. And one detail from Mr. Lowline, the Prince's own valet, a German with a gentle horse face who will wander the castle for years afterward, like a man whose language has been abolished, that in his last days the Prince asked for his rooms to be arranged so he could see the sky, and asked to hear fine music, and a piano was brought to the next room and played to him softly through the open door. The Blue Room. Mark that name. The King's Room, some call it, because 2 kings died in it before him, George IV and William IV, both in that same room, which the household knew and the Prince knew. 3 reigns have now ended between those 4 walls. You will come to know that room better than you know your mother's kitchen, but not yet. The next morning, the 15th, a Sunday, you wake at 5 out of habit before you remember, and remembering is like the floor giving way. You lie 1 minute in the icy dark listening to the castle, and the castle sounds wrong, hollow, like a bell with the clapper taken out. Then you get up because grates do not black-lead themselves in any world, whatever has happened in this one, and you dress by feel. And downstairs the servants' hall is full of people who have clearly not slept, and on the long table there is bread and dripping and tea, and beside the tea urn already, at 5 in the morning, lies a bolt of black crape that someone fetched up overnight from the stores, and Mrs. Bland, the housekeeper, grey-faced, stands at the head of the table with the list, and the new world begins. Because here is what death means below stairs. Death means work. Grief is for those who can afford to sit down. For 600 servants, the death of the Prince Consort is the largest single housekeeping operation the castle has performed in a generation, and it begins before his body is cold, and it will not end, though none of you know this yet, for years. The mirrors first. Every mirror in the private and state apartments to be covered or turned. You spend that Sunday, the darkest Sunday of the century, going room to room with Rose and a basket of black cloth, draping glass. There is a superstition in it older than the castle, that a mirror in a death house catches the soul. But nobody speaks of souls, you simply do it, cloth over glass, and each time a mirror goes dark, the room behind you vanishes from it, and by evening you have made 40 rooms disappear. Then the crape. Black crape is a silk gauze, crimped, stiff, dull, made to hold no light at all, and in the week that follows, Windsor drinks it like water. Crape on the bell pulls, crape on the picture frames, black ribbon threaded through the housemaids' caps, black stuff dresses for every female servant, the male servants into black liveries, black crape bands on every arm from the Lord Chamberlain to the boy who scrapes the boots. The stores run out. The town runs out. England itself very nearly runs out, because the whole nation has gone into mourning at once. Every shop window from Aberdeen to Penzance stripped and dressed in black, and there are silk merchants who will privately admit the prince's death was the making of them, though never above a whisper. You sew until your fingertips are pricked raw, hemming crape by lamplight in the housemaid's closet, and the crape sheds a fine black dust that gets into everything. Your tea, the creases of your knuckles, the corners of your eyes, so that the whole staff seems to be weeping soot. And the strangest work of all that first week is the listening, because the Queen is somewhere above you, and the whole castle listens for her the way a house listens for a sick child. She is not collapsed, the upper servants report, not in the way that was feared. She is worse than collapsed. She is calm. She goes through the days of the funeral arrangements white and quiet and precise, and then at night the pages on duty say they hear her. Walking. She cannot stay in the rooms. She walks the corridor with a lamp, sometimes with one of the princesses, often alone, back and forth, at 1 in the morning, at 3, a small figure in black moving through a building of 900 rooms, as if searching for a door that has been bricked up. The funeral is on the 23rd of December in St. George's Chapel, down in the lower ward, 100 yards and a whole world from your attic. Women of the household do not attend, and the Queen herself does not attend. Royal widows do not by custom, and she has gone to Osborne, taken to the Isle of Wight, half fainting by her family. So you watch what you can from the upper windows with the other maids, all of you in your blacks, breath fogging the old glass. Minute guns from the long walk, one boom rolling up the hill after another, 60 of them, the window glass shivering faintly in its leads at each. The lifeguards lining the way with their swords reversed, the coffin on its bier, no bigger at this distance than a domino tile, moving from the state entrance toward the chapel doors with the whole silent town of Windsor pressed black against the railings below, and the bell of the curfew tower tolling, one stroke, then the long cold gap, then one stroke, the slowest clock in the world, counting a man out of it. Rose cries, Annie cries, Patience, who cries at everything, is for once dry-eyed and grey. You do not cry, and you feel a monster. And then that night, carrying your candle up the attic stair, you pass the little window on the half landing and see the chapel below, lit from within, late, the workmen closing the vault, and quite suddenly you sit down on the stone step and weep like a child, for a man you never once saw in your life, whose voice you heard for 30 seconds through your unheld breath, one evening in a corridor, saying something patient in German that made his wife laugh. You are 17. You've been at Windsor 11 weeks. The reign you serve in has just broken in half, and the half you will live in has not yet shown its face. It shows its face in March, when the Queen comes back from Osborne, and the household learns what the new Windsor is going to be. The first orders sound like housekeeping and are actually theology. The blue room, where the prince died, is not to be shut up. Shutting up a death room is what was always done. Dust sheets, locked door, let it sleep. The Queen forbids it. The blue room is to be kept, her word, as a living, beautiful monument. Photographs are taken of it exactly as it stood at the moment of his death, and against those photographs the room is to be checked, so that nothing, not a chair, not an inkstand, drifts an inch from where his life left it. Fresh flowers are to be placed in it every day. A marble bust of the prince is set between the two beds, and then the order that you do not believe when Rose first tells you, that you privately decide is a scullery legend, until you are put on the duty yourself and find it is as real as coal. Every evening, the prince's rooms are to be prepared as if for his use. Hot water is to be carried up. His evening clothes are to be laid out upon the bed. In the morning, fresh towels, the chamber pot scoured and replaced, the clocks in his rooms wound, his watch wound, the blotting paper on his desk renewed when it is written over, though no hand writes on it. A dead man's valet service, performed in full every day. It will be performed, though you cannot know this either, for 40 years, until the Queen herself dies, and the whole world will eventually know of it and call it morbid or call it holy according to taste, and you will have your own opinion, which will change, because you will be one of the hands that does it. Not at first. At first you're simply a third housemaid in a house of mourning, and the mourning reorganizes everything, and the thing it reorganizes most is night, because the Queen has turned the castle nocturnal. She was always an early riser in the old life, out with the prince before breakfast. Now she cannot bear the mornings, and she cannot bear company, and she cannot bear noise, and the household bends around her grief like grass around a stone. Dinners are small, silent, and black. Guests are almost none. The staterooms stand dark. The Queen works at her boxes, the endless red dispatch boxes of government, late into the night, alone, at a desk facing his desk, and answers ministers on black-edged paper, and goes to bed past midnight in a room where a photograph of Albert on his deathbed hangs on the headboard above her pillow, at her order, where she can see it last thing, and she sleeps when she sleeps, holding his nightshirt in her arms. The maids who do her bedroom know it and say it only once, very quietly, and never again, and you'll carry it around after that like a stone given into your keeping, the knowledge that the most powerful woman on earth sleeps hugging a dead man's shirt like a lost child. A castle that lives at night needs servants at night, and this is how, in the spring of 1862, you get the place that will shape your whole life. Mrs. Fry pulls you off the morning grates and puts you on the night duty. The small crew that keeps Windsor breathing through the dark hours. There are lamp men and a night porter and a watchman crew. Those are men's places, but there must be maids as well, for the fires kept in overnight, the hot water at strange hours, the airing of rooms that can only be entered when their owners are elsewhere, and the Queen's hours being what they now are elsewhere means night. You are given it, Rose says, because you're quiet on your feet and quieter with your tongue, and because on the 14th of December you were inside the staterooms and afterward said nothing to anyone, and it was noticed. Everything is noticed. The castle is an eye. So now your day runs from 4 in the afternoon to 4 in the morning, and you become a citizen of the dark castle, which is a different country from the day one, with different laws and different weather and a different people. Learn the tools of your new trade. The lamp first. Windsor is lit partly by gas now, the corridors and offices, but the private apartments burn oil and candles, because the Queen dislikes gaslight in her rooms, and oil means the lamp room, a low-vaulted chamber below stairs where a man named Mr. Deller presides over several hundred lamps like a priest over relics. Colza oil, thick, faintly nutty, that must be warmed in winter or it will not draw. Wicks trimmed flat and true because an untrue wick smokes, and a lamp that smokes in the Queen's corridor is a hanging matter, or feels like one. You learn to carry a lit hand lamp up a spiral stair in a draught, cupping the chimney glass with your palm almost against the hot glass, feeling the heat build in your skin to the last second before burning and holding it there, because your body has become a lampshade, and that is simply one of the things a body is for now. The candles next, and the candle arithmetic. Wax candles in the crested boxes for upstairs, tallow for below, and the old perquisite, older than anyone can trace, that partly burned candle ends belong to the servants, which in the old days made candle ends a currency, footmen selling stubs by the pound to dealers in the town. The prince in his lifetime went through the household accounts like a north wind, and much of that ancient gleaning was stopped or bought out, and there are men in this castle who mourn him sincerely and simultaneously have never forgiven him for it. And you learn that too, that below stairs a man can be a saint and a nuisance in the same breath, and both truly. And the dark itself is a tool, or a medium, like water to a boatman. You learn the castle blind. It takes months, 200 yards of grand corridor, and you know it by the count of your steps, and the change under your slippers from board to carpet to board. You know the 4 steps down by the Rubens room, by the way the air cools across your face as you come to them. You know the place where the wainscot creaks and you step wide of it without thinking, the way you once stepped over the 3rd stile on the field path home. You move through a building stuffed with the plunder of an empire, Van Dykes and Gobelins and porphyry vases as tall as you are, and all of it is only shapes of deeper black on black, and your world is the small trembling sphere of your lamp, 6 feet of carpet, a door handle of cold brass coming to meet your hand. Cold brass. Everything at night is a temperature before it is a thing. The brass is cold, the mahogany handrail less cold. The stone of the window reveals coldest of all wet cold, a cold that files through the side of your hand. The scuttle handle is cold until the 3rd landing, when your own blood has warmed it. The airing rooms are warm and smell of hot linen. The corridor outside the blue room is kept warm, always. Fires and flowers for a dead man. And stepping into that warmth out of the black cold passage is the strangest weather in the castle, like walking from January straight into a June evening that someone has trapped and refuses to let go. You are 6 months on the night duty before that corridor becomes yours. In the autumn of 1862, the maid who carries the evening water for the prince's rooms is wanted for the Queen's own floor, and Mrs. Fry looks down her list, and the eye of the castle turns on you. She takes you up herself the first evening, which tells you what weight the thing carries. 9 o'clock, the can of hot water, 11 pounds, the old groove in your fingers finding its old place. Up the private stair along the warm corridor, past a page who does not look at you, to the door, and Mrs. Fry stops with her hand on the handle and gives you the law. You go in, she says. You do not look about you as if it were a raree show. The water is changed at the washstand. The towels are changed. If the flowers have dropped, you take away the fallen petals in your apron, never in view. You touch nothing else. If anything is out of its place, you tell me. You do not write it yourself. There is a photograph, and there is a way. You do not speak in that room, not even to me. And if Her Majesty should come, you are not there. You are gone, or you are stone. Do you understand me? Yes, Mrs. Fry. She looks at you a moment longer, a broad, tired woman with 40 years of other people's houses in her face, and something in her softens by a thread. "It is easier," she says, "if you think of him as living." That is how the Queen thinks of it, and she is not mad, whatever the clever people say. It is a house where somebody is always just about to come home. You may serve that. Plenty of worse things are served in great houses. Then she opens the door and you carry your water into the dead. The blue room is smaller than you expected. That is the first shock. You had built it in your mind out of the cry through the walls and the minute guns, built it cathedral-sized, and it is a room. A handsome private room with 2 beds set side by side, blue hangings, a writing table, a fire burning low and even in the grate. The second shock is the flowers. The room is full of them, fresh, white and green. Their sweetness lying over the fire warmth in slow layers, and under the sweetness the faint good smells of any well-kept room, wax, linen, cedar. It smells alive. That is the third shock, and the one that undoes you a little standing there with your can. You had braced for a tomb. It is the opposite of a tomb. It is the most inhabited empty room in the world. Between the 2 beds, on a pedestal, the white marble bust. You are told not to look about you, and you don't, but he is in front of you and cannot be helped. A fine, bold brow, whiskers, the face calm the particular way marble is calm. On the bed nearest, laid out with the valet's geometric care, evening clothes, black coat, white waistcoat, the linen folded so sharp the creases could cut, a pair of gloves, one atop the other, kid leather gone soft ivory. On the washstand, the towels of this morning used by no one, changed now by you for the towels of tonight which no one will use. You pour the steaming water into the ewer, and the steam rises past your face and beads on the cold tiles behind, and your hands do the work with the sureness of a year of cans and ewers, while the rest of you stands slightly outside itself, watching a 17-year-old girl, 18 now, pour hot water for a man 11 months dead, in the room where 2 kings died before him, in the middle of a castle, in the middle of a kingdom holding its breath. You take away 4 fallen chrysanthemum petals in your apron pocket. You bank the fire with 5 lumps laid by hand silent. You leave. In the corridor, Mrs. Fry looks at your face and nods once, satisfied by whatever she finds there, and from that evening the duty is yours. And I want to slow down here, because this becomes the spine of your nights for years, and it is the thing people afterward always ask you about wrongly. They ask, was it ghostly? Was it horrid? They want the room to be a horror, and it never is, and you can never make them understand what it actually was, which is worse and better at the same time. It was tender. It was the tenderness of the whole thing that got into you. Somebody loved a man so much she ordered time to stop, and time, which obeys no one, obeyed her in one room, because she was the queen, and grief was her empire now. And you were part of the machinery of that stopped time. Every night the water, every night the coat and the gloves. You come to know his things the way you know the things of the living people you serve. The ivory brushes with the light scratch on the back of one, the particular pen he wore down at a slant. In December, the anniversary week, the room fills with wreaths until the flower smell is almost too much to stand in, and the Queen keeps vigil there on the 14th, and you dress the room that week with your heart in your mouth. Because the Queen comes, not that first evening, and not often at your hour, but she comes, and the corridor teaches you its warnings. The page straightens, a door far off opens with a particular doubled click, and you are gone or you are stone. You've been stone for her twice by the end of that first winter. Twice, face to the wall of the warm corridor, you've listened to the Queen of England walk past you into the room where her husband died, and heard the rustle of crape, which is drier and harsher than silk, a sound like slow fire in stubble, and heard the door close, and then, the second time through the door, a voice, not weeping, talking, quiet, level, on and on, with pauses, the unmistakable rhythm of one side of a conversation. The pages say she talks to the bust, tells him the day, the ministers, the children, asks him things and waits. The clever people in London say things about that, you later learn. You, 18, in the corridor, with your ear full of that patient murmur through oak, form the opinion you will keep to your grave, that there was nothing in that room to smile at, and that a woman who must rule half the world alone may talk it over each night with whomever she pleases. Your nights are not all corridor and shrine. Come down with me in the middle hours and see the rest of the dark castle, because it is a whole world and you are one of maybe 30 souls awake in it. The great kitchen at 1 in the morning is a red cave. The fires are slaked but never dead, banked mounds breathing under their ash, and the walls, 30 feet up into the medieval dark of the roof, carry a copper battery of 500 pots that catches the ember light and gives it back in dull suns. The night kitchen maid, a Welsh woman called Gwen, keeps the stock pots murmuring and will give you cocoa if you bring her gossip from upstairs, and you bring her gossip the way a smart trader brings goods, real but harmless, because Gwen's cocoa is thick as gravy, and the walk from the private apartments has put frost in your bones. The lamp room at 2, where you take your lamp for oil, and old Mr. Della, who trims wicks with a pair of scissors worn to his hand like a 6th finger, tells you stories of the old king's time, George IV, when he was a boy in this same room, and the castle, he says, blazed. Every window, girl. Cards and music till dawn, and the king's chef was a Frenchman with 16 undercooks, and the candles alone cost more in a month than you and I will earn in our lives. He snips a wick, flat and true, and holds it to the light. And now look. He does not say more than that. Snip. Now look. The 2 words hold the whole reign. The watchman's round at 3, which you sometimes cross paths with in the lower corridors, a bull's-eye lantern swinging its yellow eye along the stone, and the watchman, Sergeant Hale, an old soldier with a Crimea limp checking his telltale clocks, the little machines set on the walls that must be pegged at each point of the round to prove a man was truly there at his hour. Fire is what he walks against. Fire is the castle's oldest fear, older than treason. A fortress of stone, yes, but stuffed with 4 centuries of timber floors and tinder tapestries, and every servant carries somewhere in the back of the skull the memory of the Tower Armoury burning within living memory, and nearer still whispered that it was a chimney at Windsor smoking unswept that helped kill the prince. No, that is not right. That is not what killed him. But grief looks for culprits, and the flues get swept now with a vengeance. And Sergeant Hale walks his round, peg by peg, clock by clock, all night, every night, and will do until he dies, which he will, on his feet, on his round, years from now, between the peg at the plate pantry and the peg at the great stair, and the castle will bury him with more real tears below stairs than some dukes get above. And once in that first winter, near 4 in the morning, coming back along the north side with your empty scuttle, you stop at a window because snow has begun. You are 4 stories up on the steepest face of the castle hill. Below you the roofs of the town are whitening, street by street, and the river is a black ribbon dividing white from white, and on the far bank the playing fields of Eton lie smooth as fresh linen, and there is one light burning in all that distance, one, some sleepless soul in Datchet with a candle, and the snow comes down through the last of the gaslight in slow diagonal armies, and behind you 200 yards of dark corridor breathe their wax and stone breath on your neck, and you stand with the scuttle handle biting your cold fingers as you think, with a clarity that frightens you, I am the only person seeing this. Of all the millions the Queen rules, this sight, this minute is mine alone. It is the first time in your life you have owned anything of that size. Then the curfew tower drops 4 notes down through the snow, and you go to bed, walking the last corridor with your candle guttering, and sleep till noon in the attic while the day castle grinds on beneath you, and get up in the dark and do it all again. Now let me tell you about the errand that took you off the hill, because a story that stays inside one building starts to press on the chest, and besides, this errand matters. Everything in it comes back later. In the autumn of 1862, the household begins to speak of Frogmore. Frogmore is a small estate in the home park, 1/2 mile from the castle walls, lawns and a lake, and a modest white house where the Queen's mother, the Duchess of Kent, lived until her death in the March before Albert's, that terrible year taking the Queen's mother and husband in 9 months. Remember that, it explains much. The Duchess lies in a mausoleum built for her by the lake, and within days, literally days, of Albert's death, the Queen chose the ground beside it and commanded a second mausoleum, a great one, for him and one day for herself, and all through 1862, while you carried water to the Blue Room, several hundred men 1/2 mile away were raising a granite and copper tomb at a speed that money alone does not explain. Devotion drove it like a whip. The Queen meant her husband to be in his own house, her word again, by the first anniversary of his death. 1 year, for a domed cruciform building of Aberdeen granite and Portland stone. They did it. Say what you will of the age, and there is much to say, it could build. Your part is small and cold, and you never forget it. In early December, the 14th approaching, the pressure in the castle rising like water against a lock gate, you are one of a party sent down to Frogmore with hampers, cloths, brooms and cans, because the interior, still raw, its marble unfinished, its walls waiting years yet for their painted angels, must be made fit, and made fit quietly, by castle hands, not contractors' hands. You go down through the home park at 3 in the afternoon with the light already failing, 4 maids and 2 footmen and a cart, your breath going up in columns, the grass grey with the day's unmelted frost that creaks, actually creaks, under the cart wheels, and the deer standing off among the black trees in herds, watching you pass with their ears turning like signals. The mausoleum comes up out of the December murk by the frozen lake, dome and cross, granite the colour of a thundercloud, and the scaffolding just down, and the ground around it still builder's ground, frozen mud in wheel ruts hard as iron, and it is the newest building you have ever entered, and it feels, inside, older than the castle. Cold presses in there like a hand on the breastbone. Your voices, the few words the work needs, come back off the dome changed, rounder, not yours. You sweep stone dust from marble. You wash, with water that scums with ice even as you work, the step where a coffin will rest. Your wet hands go from red to white to a burning blue-grey numbness, and you work on, because the frost is not interested in your hands and the 14th is not moving. One of the footmen, trying to shift a plank, tears his palm open on a scaffold nail and bleeds shockingly red on all that grey and white, and is bandaged with the strip of somebody's apron, and the smear is scrubbed from the marble with more ice water, and Mrs. Fry inspects the place where it was for a full minute before she is satisfied, because the rule down here is the rule up there. Nothing out of its place, not a petal, not a drop. You finish in the dark and walk back the half-mile behind the cart's one lamp, and the castle rises ahead of you on its hill with perhaps 30 windows lit of its 1,000, and Patience beside you hooks her arm through yours and says, out of nowhere, teeth chattering, I keep thinking it's a house. It has a hall and rooms and steps, and nobody will ever live there. And you say, before you can stop yourself, she thinks somebody will. And neither of you says anything more the whole way home, because you're both 18, and you have both just understood the Queen a little, and it is too large a thing to talk about with frozen lips. What you do not know, walking behind that cart, is that in 10 days you will see that building again, at night, in circumstances that only a handful of living people will ever be able to describe. Hold that thread. I am going to wind the year tighter first, because the castle you walk back into that evening is a castle under strain, and you feel it now at every level, and to be honest with you, the strain is part of why the night world has swallowed so many extra hands. The mourning was to be the deepest ever known, and it is, but deep mourning was designed to be a season, and it is becoming a climate. The Queen will not go to London. Buckingham Palace stands shut. She will not open Parliament. She will not show herself. The ministers come down to Windsor and wait in cold rooms, and some of them wait days and communicate with their sovereign through her daughter Princess Alice, or on slips of paper, because she cannot yet bear to discuss business face to face with men who are not family. The country was all tenderness the first year. You saw the tenderness with your own eyes, the whole town in black grown carters weeping at the minute guns. But tenderness is a crop that needs sun, and the Queen has removed the sun, and below stairs, where everything is known first, the wise heads are already muttering the thing the newspapers will not print for a few years yet, that a Queen who is never seen will start to be resented. That grief on this scale, held this long, becomes a kind of weather over the whole country. Mrs. Hedge, boiling a little kettle in the upper closet, puts it the way that stays with you. The poor soul, she says, has shut every door in the finest house in the world, and doesn't see that she's on the outside of all of them. And yet you are inside those doors nightly, and what you see is not what the clever world imagines, a woman prostrate on a sofa. What you see, in lamplight, in slices, in passing, is work. The red boxes go up in the evening and come down before dawn. Done. The blotting paper you renew on a dead man's desk has a living twin 2 rooms away that is black with use. The Queen reads, annotates, argues with her ministers on paper, appoints, refuses, corrects, in a hand that gallops. Grief has taken her voice from the public and her face from the coin of daily life, but the Empire's paperwork never misses a single night, and you know it never misses because you are one of the people who tends the lamps it is done by. Years later, when men in clubs say she did nothing for a decade, you will hold your tongue, because a good servant holds her tongue, and you will think of colza oil, gallons of it, burned to ash over those boxes at 2 a.m, and you will know exactly what nothing looked like and how it smelled, and which finger of your left hand you burned keeping it lit. There is one more person you must meet before the 14th of December comes round again, because he becomes a fixture of your nights, and history will make his name a scandal and a riddle, and you will know him first as simply the loudest footsteps in a silent castle. In the year after the prince's death he is not yet resident, only up from the highlands at intervals with the ponies, but from the first you can chart him through the hush like a bell through fog. A Scotsman, a gillie from Balmoral, a big man in a kilt with a beard like heather and a stride that has never once in its life been asked to soften. John Brown. He walks the private corridors as if they were a hillside. He speaks to everyone, high and low, in exactly the same voice, which is a thing you had not known was possible, and the first time he passes you at your work, you at your grate, stone among stones, he stops, looks down and says, "Good morning to ye, lass, cold enough for ye," and is gone before you can decide whether answering would cost you your place. The pages are appalled by him. The equerries are appalled by him. The Queen in time will be able to bear almost no one's company but his, precisely you come to believe, because he is the only person left on earth who talks to her as if she were a woman and not a shrine. Below stairs, opinion splits down the middle and stays split for 20 years. You keep your own counsel, but you notice one thing early that the clever people never weigh. In a castle where 600 people walk on tiptoe, the Queen keeps near her the one man who stamps. Broken hearts do not choose their medicine sensibly, but they choose it truly. Now, the 14th of December, 1862. 1 year. The week before it, the castle turns inward like a hand closing. Wreaths begin arriving days early, from the family, from courts across Europe, evergreen and white flowers, hothouse violets, immortelles, those strange French wreaths of dried yellow everlastings under glass that will sit on royal tombs for a century. The blue room fills. Your nightly water duty becomes a passage through a garden. The flower smell so dense in the warm air that it follows you out into the corridor and clings in your clothes, so that Rose says she can smell your shift change on you in the dark of the attic. Violets and fur, the smell of the Queen's sorrow, worn home on a housemaid. On the anniversary itself, the household moves as if the death were new. Services in the private chapel. The Queen and the elder children go down to the blue room in the evening and are there a long time, and you are held back in the service passage with your can until nearly 11. And when you are finally let in to change the water, the fire has burned to a red hollow, and the room is blood warm and thick with violet, and someone has left. On the bed beside the laid-out evening clothes, a small wreath of white flowers tied with black ribbon, placed where a heart would be if a man were wearing that coat, and you change the water and the towels with your own heart hammering in your ears, and you do not look at the little wreath again, and you look at nothing else all night. But the anniversary is not the event. The event comes 4 days later, on the 18th of December, and it comes at night, and it is yours. You know something is moving 2 days beforehand, because the night castle cannot keep a secret from its own bloodstream. Extra men are quietly warned for duty. The clerk of works is seen with lanterns being counted. Down at St. George's Chapel, where the prince has lain these 12 months in the royal vault, there are workmen, and the word comes up through the stone the way word always comes, kitchen to lamp room to attic, and the word is that the tomb by the lake is ready, and he is going to his own house, and it is to be done at night, privately, no state, no crowds, no minute guns. The public funeral was for the nation. This is for her. On the night, you're on your ordinary duties, and your ordinary duties are what save you, because they put you where you can see, understand, Nobody summons a third housemaid to witness the translation of the prince consort's coffin, but somebody must keep the fires in along the north corridor, and somebody must carry the 10 o'clock water, and the castle that night is so short of hands in so many places, so many of the men drawn off to the chapel and the park, that the geography of your work simply lays the thing before you in fragments, the way the 14th of December had been laid before you a year ago, through walls from below in pieces. Some historians will write that it happened on the 15th, some the 18th, and you will read both in your old age and smile, because you were awake in the building and they were not. From the half-landing window on the private stair, a little past 10, you see the lower ward. Frost fog has come up off the river and lies over the town so that the castle stands in a white sea, and in the ward below lanterns, not many. A dozen moving points of yellow, and the great west door of St. George's standing open with lamplight inside it. A tall narrow panel of gold in all that grey, and figures moving in it small and black and silent, and you stand with your fingers on the freezing stone mullion, permitting yourself 60 seconds of looking, counting them, because even tonight, especially tonight, a maid caught idling at a window is a maid finished. At the foot of the private stair, carrying your can along the service passage, you hear the horses. Muffled, outside the walls, on the frost, hooves and the grind of wheels moving at a walking pace, and no voices at all, which is the wrong sound for horses and wheels. Horses and wheels always come with voices, and the silence around these is a made thing, a discipline, and it passes below the windows and fades toward the long walk gate in the park, and your arms have goose flesh inside your sleeves that has nothing to do with the cold. And near midnight, coming back empty along the north side, you meet Mr. Lülein, the prince's valet, the gentle German horse-faced man, standing in the dark corridor at a window that looks south toward the park, toward Frogmore, though there is nothing to see that way but fog and one distant fuzzed prick of light that might be a lantern by the lake and might be nothing. He is in full mourning, hat in his 2 hands, and he is simply standing, and by every law of your life you should pass him invisibly, eyes down, stone among stones. Instead, alone in the dark on the strangest night of the rain, you stop. You could not afterward say why. And he turns his long kind face to you and knows you, the little maid of the water can, and says, in his soft accent, quite simply, as if answering a question you had not asked, "He is gone home now." And you say, before your training can catch you, "God rest him, sir." And Mr. Lülein bows to you. A valet bowing to a third housemaid in a black corridor at midnight, both of you servants of a man a year dead. It is the only bow you will receive in your entire working life, and you will hold it, please believe me, you will hold it past your golden wedding. That is the climax of this story, if a story must have one. No fire, no scaffold, no mob. A dozen lanterns in the fog, wheels on frost with the voices removed, one light by a frozen lake, and a bow. History is not always loud. Sometimes the largest thing that happens in a kingdom in a given year happens at a walking pace, in fog, past a girl with an empty water can, and makes less noise than the frost itself, creaking in the grass of the home park under the wheels of a gun carriage bearing a man to the house his wife built him in 1 year of granite and grief. You do not sleep when you go up. You lie in the attic dark listening to Annie argue with her sister, and the wind work its knife blade through the honey-thick glass, and somewhere 1/2 mile south, in a domed building whose floor you washed with ice water 10 days ago, the prince consort lies tonight for the first time, and the marble step you scrubbed blue-handed holds his coffin, and you think, That is my work under him. Nobody will ever know, there is no ledger for it. But that is my work under him, mine and a bleeding footman's and 5 frozen girls. And you find you're crying again, the way you cried on the stairs after the funeral, without drama, water simply leaving your eyes, and Rose's voice comes quiet across the dark room, not asleep after all, saying, "It's done now, girl. Sleep. She'll be easier now he's settled." And you say, "Will she?" And Rose is quiet a long time and then says no, but sleep anyway. Rose is right both times. The Queen is not easier, and you sleep anyway. You are learning the 2 great arts of service, which are the 2 great arts of most human life, seeing everything and sleeping anyway. After that night, the years begin to move the way years do in a great house on a fixed rail, and I am going to let them move and show you what the long widowhood was actually made of, night by night, season by season, because this is the part no book quite gets, and you lived it. Winter is coal. Say the word winter to you in your old age, and your shoulders will remember before your mind does. The castle in a hard frost burns tons of coal a day, and though the heavy carrying is men's work, the night fires are yours, and a scuttle of best walls and weighs upwards of 30 pounds full, and you learn the economy of the body that all carrying trades learn. The change of hands at the same landing every time, the set of the hip, the trick of standing up with the load using the legs and never the back, because a housemaid's back is her capital, and a strained one is beggary. Your palms harden until the scuttle handle finds its groove without complaint. The skin of your knuckles opens along the same 3 lines every January, cracks that sting in the soda water and heal white, and Mrs. Hedge gives you mutton fat and sugar to work into them at night, an old receipt, and your half of the attic smells faintly of mutton all winter, and Patience says she dreams of dinner because of you. Winter is also ice. Once, gloriously, in the great frost the pond in the home park bears, and on a Sunday afternoon, your hours being your own between chapel and 4, you walk down with Rose and Patience and watch the skating, the gentlemen of the household and the officers cutting figures, breath like engine steam, and some of the young royalty out too with skates strapped to their boots, laughing, actually laughing, out loud, in the open air, half a mile from the shrine you tend nightly, and it does not seem wrong to you. It seems like sap rising in a cut tree, life insisting, and you stand on the frozen grass in your blacks among the other watchers until your feet lose all feeling, and count it one of the best afternoons of your life. Spring is airing. The castle exhales. Windows that have been sealed since October are opened room by room on the mild days, and the smell of the year's first cut grass comes up off the slopes and walks the corridors like a visitor, mixing strangely with the wax and the crape, and you and the other maids carry hundreds of pounds of bedding to the airing rooms and beat carpets in the courts, wielding the cane beater in figure 8s until your right arm trembles, dust hanging in the sun in golden nations. In spring the Queen goes to Osborne, and part of the household travels and part stays, and the castle on the Queen's departure changes its breathing entirely, the hush lifting 1 careful inch, the pages playing cards openly in their room, somebody whistling in the plate pantry, quickly shooshed, then not shooshed. But the blue room duty never travels and never pauses. Wherever the court is, at Windsor the water goes up at 9, the clothes are laid out, the watch is wound. You keep the flame of the stopped clock while the living clocks go to the seaside. Summer is the strangest season, because summer is when the world comes to the walls. Ascot week fills the town below with carriages and noise, and excursion trains bring trippers by the thousand to stare up at the round grey tower and buy views of the castle printed on cards, and the state apartments are shown on set days to respectable visitors when the Queen is away, herded through by the housekeeper's staff, and you, a night creature now, sleeping your noon sleep in the attic, sometimes wake to the sound of their feet and voices far below, hundreds of feet shuffling through the Van Dykes, and you lie there thinking you are 20 yards and one locked door from a room where a dead man's evening clothes are lying on his bed with the creases sharp, and you will go home to Clapham tonight and never know it. What the public was allowed to see of Windsor in those years was a magnificent shell. You lived in the animal. Autumn is the boxes and the fogs. The court comes back. The red dispatch boxes thicken with the parliamentary season. The river fogs climb the hill earlier each week until the lamps burn all day in the lower corridors, and the whole castle settles into the long dark run toward the 14th of December, which comes every year, and every year is kept. The services, the wreaths, the violets, the vigil, year upon year upon year, until the youngest maids cannot remember a Windsor without it, and speak of the prince, whom they never saw, the way villagers speak of a saint, familiarly, possessively, ours, and threaded through all the seasons your nights and the small immense world of the people who share them. Gwen of the Cocoa, who marries a groom from the royal mews and leaves, and cries, and makes you swear to think of her at 1 in the morning, and you do for years, a pang at 1 o'clock like a little bell. Old Della of the lamp room, whose hands begin to shake so that Mrs. Fry quietly sends the youngest lamp boy in to do his trimming while Della talks. And everyone maintains the fiction, because he is 60 years in service, and the fiction is his pension until the real one comes. Sergeant Hale and his telltale clocks, who teaches you on slow nights the names of the stars out the north windows, learned on watch before Sebastopol, and who says the same sentence at the end of every lesson, the sky's the one thing in this place Her Majesty doesn't own, and laughs his 3-note laugh, heh, 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 like a clock himself. And Rose who taught you the walls, who rises to second housemaid and then, in 1866, to first, and grows a little more silent with each rise, the way people do here, as if promotion were a ladder into thinner air. It is Rose who stands beside you through the night in 1864 when Patience takes the scarlet fever, and the two of you sit turn about at her bed in the little infirmary room with cloths and water, the same nursing you gave the blue room every night given now to a living burning girl, and Patience turns the corner at 4 in the morning on the 3rd night, the fever breaking in a sweat that soaks the mattress through, and you and Rose strip and remake the bed around her weightless body with 4 hands that know each other so well they need no words at all, and afterwards stand in the passage outside and shake, both of you, silently, holding each other's forearms, and never once speak of it after. That is the other thing no book gets, the tenderness below stairs. History will remember the Queen's grief because it was written in granite and gaslight. Nobody writes down 2 housemaids holding each other's arms in a passage at 4 in the morning because a 3rd one is going to live. So I am writing it down now. It happened. It happened all the time. It was most of what happened, in fact. The rest was just empire. And since we're being honest about the nights, let me give you the part of them that the Daylight Castle pretended not to believe in, and the Night Castle never argued about, because arguing takes breath, and night workers save theirs. The ghosts. Every great old house has them, and Windsor, being the greatest and oldest, has a full establishment, with precedents and territories as strict as the living households. Herne the Hunter in the Home Park, antlered, older than the castle itself, whom the deer are said to know. King Henry VIII dragging his ulcered leg down the cloister passage, heard, never seen. Poor pale Queen Elizabeth in the library she loved, glimpsed, they say, by more than 1 century, and 1 century within living memory court-martialled for being found insensible at his post, and defended on the grounds of what he had seen at the library window, and acquitted, which tells you something about what the officers of that court had themselves heard on quiet nights. You were asked always, at village firesides afterward, whether you ever saw anything, and you give the same answer for 60 years, and it is the truth, and it satisfies nobody, which is how you know it is the truth. You never saw anything. You heard everything. A great castle at 3 in the morning is an orchestra of almosts. Stone gives up the day's heat with small ticking sighs exactly like a footstep taking its weight. Old timber floors ease themselves 1/8 of an inch and produce 2 rooms away 1 clear deliberate creak. Wind in a chimney flue 200 feet off can sing 1 low note, so like a human voice holding grief in, that the first winter you heard it, you stood outside the Queen's own corridor with your skin crawling, certain past argument, until Sergeant Hale came by on his round and named it for you. Northeast wind girl in the Brunswick flue, does it every hard frost, been listening to that woman cry since before your mother was born. And he laughed his 3-note laugh, and you laughed, and neither of your laughs was quite the full price of the thing, and you both walked on a little quicker all the same. Because here is what the night duty actually teaches you about hauntings, and it is worth carrying out of this story into your own dark house. A building that old is not haunted by the dead. It is saturated with the living, centuries of them, and at night, when the current living go quiet, the saturation seeps. Every stone of that place had been leaned on by someone in trouble, prayed against, wept against, laughed against. You had faced those walls yourself, nose to the stone, heart hammering 20 times, and left your own small deposit of a living moment in them. Multiply that by 700 years. That is what you heard settling and ticking and sighing all around you in the dark, not spirits. Residue, the castle remembering itself, the way an old woman's hands go on kneading bread in her sleep. It frightened the new maids and it kept you company, and both responses were correct. The other thing the fireside askers never believe is the food, so let me set that down too, because an army of night workers marches on its stomach like any other, and the commissaria of the dark castle was a world of its own. The official meal was supper in the servants' hall before the day staff went up. Boiled beef or mutton, potatoes, table beer, solid and endless. The Queen's household never stinted its stomach, whatever else it wore in black. But the real meals, the ones your body remembers, were the unofficial ones, the night economy. Gwen's cocoa at 1, thick as gravy, drunk standing at the great scrub table under the copper suns with your chilblained fingers wrapped round the can. Bread and dripping toasted on a fire shovel over the banked kitchen fire at 3, the fat hissing, the smell of it filling the red cave and making Sergeant Hale appear out of the darkness with the reliability of a tide. Cold plum pudding in January, the Christmas surplus, sliced and fried till the edges carameled, which you've eaten off good china in your almshouse years, and never once had it taste as it tasted at 4 in the morning in 1866, eaten off a saucepan lid, shared 3 ways with the frost flowering on the inside of the kitchen windows, and the whole weight of the sleeping castle stacked above your 3 small laughters. Nobody wrote those meals in any ledger either. They were wages, all the same, some of the best wages ever paid in that reign, and once a year the night world and the day world traded places for an evening, and you must have this too, because without it you will think the mourning castle was only grim, and it was not, it was human, and humans leak light. The servants' ball at Christmas. Yes, even in those years after the first terrible two, it crept back, quieter than the legendary roots of the old rain, but real. The servants' hall cleared, a fiddler and a cornet from the town, the housekeeper opening the dancing with the house steward with tremendous ceremony, and then 4 hours of reels and polkas danced by housemaids and footmen and kitchen staff with the pent energy of people who tiptoe for a living. You danced, believe it. You, the silent one, the stone among stones, danced every dance of every ball from 1864 to 1881, and the sergeant footman who proposed in 1869 proposed because of the way you went down the middle in Sir Roger de Coverley, with your cap ribbons flying. And though you refused him, you never once regretted the dancing. And when you were very old, the granddaughter found you one evening stepping it alone and slow by your hearth, one hand holding an invisible hand, and you were not ashamed, and told her straight, "That is a polka from Windsor Castle, child," and better company has never held that hand since. The Queen knew of the balls and approved them, which surprised the outside world when it learned such things, and surprised nobody inside. She was never against joy below her floor. She had only lost the way to it on her own. There is a difference, and the household knew the difference, and loved her partly for it, that in the blackest years she still signed the order for the fiddler, still sent down the Christmas beef to the last scullery boy, still asked, through the housekeeper, whether the maids' attics had had their allowance of coal in the hard weather. Grief had closed her doors. It never once closed her hand. When you hear her called cold in the writings of clever persons who warm themselves their whole lives at fires somebody else laid, remember who tells you otherwise, the people who laid the fires. One more piece of the machine, and then the held-back night, because you would scold me for leaving out the linen, and you would be right. The linen was half your life. A castle of that size is, among everything else it is, a laundry of monstrous appetite. The royal and household wash ran to thousands of pieces a week, and though the washing itself went out to the great laundry with its own staff and its own steam, the sorting, the counting, the mending, the airing, the marking, all of that upper work passed through housemaids' hands, and much of it, in your years, through yours, at night, when the linen rooms were free. You learned linen the way a banker learns coin. Fine Irish sheeting for the upper floors, herringbone huckerback for the towels, the Queen's own marked with a crowned VR in cross-stitch no bigger than a beetle, worked by some girl in a school for orphan needlewomen years before, thousands of tiny stitches by a child whose name nobody kept, handled nightly by you, whose name nobody kept either, in the service of a monogram known to the whole earth. You darned by lamplight until the lamp and your eyes gave out together, wove the needle under and over across a worn place until the new thread sat flush as water, and there was a deep animal satisfaction in it that you never found words for and never needed to, the satisfaction of the patched thing outliving the tear, of decay turned back one more season by 10 fingers and a steel splinter and a tension. The Queen's household threw away almost nothing. Sheets went sides to middle when the centres wore, then down the hierarchy of the house, floor by floor, ending their half-century of service as rubbing cloths in your housemaid's box, and there were mornings you polished a grate with a rag that had been slept on by a king, and knew it, because the ghost of the monogram was still in the weave, and thought nothing of it at all, because that is what a household is when it is real. Nothing wasted, nothing unconnected, everything descending and serving and descending again, from the crown to the rag, one fabric. There is one night I've been holding back, because you held it back too for decades, and told it first to your granddaughter, and only because she asked the right question, which was not what was the Queen like. Everyone asked that, but the right one. Did she ever see you? It is February of 1865. You are 20. You've been on the Blue Room water for 2 years and a half, and the duty has worn itself so deep into you that your body performs it while your mind stands elsewhere, and that, Mrs. Fry would tell you, is exactly when a servant is in danger, and Mrs. Fry would be right. The night is wild. A southwest gale has been leaning on the castle since dusk, and the flues are moaning, and every window on the private side has its own voice, and weather like that mishandles sound, swallows some noises and invents others, and so the corridor gives you no warning at all, no pages shuffle, no doubled click. You are inside the Blue Room, at the washstand, the fresh water half poured, steam on your face when the door opens behind you. You know before you turn, you know by the crape, that dry hiss, fire and stubble, and under it the small hard click of jet beads, and you turn because not turning is impossible. The body insists on facing what enters, and there in the doorway, a lamp in her hand, in her nightcap, in black, is the Queen. She is tiny. That is the thought your terror wastes its first half-second on. You have served her hush for 4 years, faced walls for her, built your whole life around her orbit, and she is a small, stout woman, shorter than you, shorter than Patience, with a round face the lamp makes rounder, and eyes swollen with crying or sleeplessness or both. 45 years old and looking 60. And she has come to her husband's room at 1 in the morning in a gale, as the pages always said she did, and tonight the room is not empty. Tonight there is a housemaid in it, caught red-handed holding a can. Everything you have been taught detonates at once and cancels itself. You cannot leave, she is in the door. You cannot face the wall, you are facing her. Your knees decide for you, and you drop a curtsy so deep it is nearly a fall, eyes to the floor, and the water still steaming in the ewer, and the wind pours over the roofs above you both, and there is a silence that lasts. You will swear to this on your deathbed, a fortnight. And then the Queen says, quite quietly, in that clear small voice the whole world will only ever hear a few recorded ghosts of, "You are the one who brings the water." Not a question. You answer it anyway, at the floor, in a whisper. "Yes, Your Majesty." Another silence. The lamp flame leans and rights itself in her hand as a draught finds the door. And then she says a thing you will turn over for the rest of your life, examining it the way your father turned over strange coins. She says, "He liked everything just so, and you keep it so." And then, after a moment, almost to herself, so faint the gale nearly takes it, "It is a great comfort to me that it is kept so. That is all." She does not dismiss you, and cannot be left. And so for perhaps a minute more, while she moves slowly past you to the bed, and stands looking down at the laid-out clothes with her lamp, you exist in the same room as your sovereign, stone among stones, the steam off your water can drifting between you, and you learn what the air around great grief actually feels like, which is not dramatic at all. It feels like the air in a church on a weekday, used, quiet, heavier than other air. Then she says, without turning, in a voice restored to order, "You may go," and you go, can and all, along the warm corridor and down the private stair, and your legs carry you exactly as far as the half landing before they sit you down on the same cold step where you wept after the funeral 3 years before, and you stay there until your heart comes back down out of your ears. You told Mrs. Fry because the law was to tell, and Mrs. Fry heard you out with her lips pressed and asked one question. What did you touch after she entered? And you said, nothing, ma'am, and she nodded, and you waited to be dismissed from the best place a girl of your parish had ever held, waited days, and no word ever came. Whether the Queen never mentioned it, or mentioned it without displeasure, you never learned. But the following Christmas, when the housekeeper distributed the Queen's gifts to the staff, printed cards and cloth for a dress, the parcel with your name on it held cloth for a dress, and, wrapped inside the cloth, small and unexplained, a photograph. The Blue Room, one of the memorial photographs taken in 1861, the room you had kept, printed small, mounted on card. No note, no name. There were maids who got extra cloth that year, and maids who got a book of sermons, and one maid in the whole castle who got a photograph of a room, and nobody, not Rose, not Mrs. Fry, not you, ever said one word about it aloud. You have it still. Your granddaughter has seen it. It is in the tin box with your mother's paper of pins, and the frost has got into the card's corners the way frost gets into everything at last, and the room in the picture is grey and small and full of flowers, and when you are gone it will mean nothing to anyone. A dim photograph of a bed and a bust, and that is right. That is how service is. The meaning is not transferable. The meaning was between a widow and a girl with a water can. 1 minute, 1 gale, 1 sentence. He liked everything just so. And you keep it so. You kept it so. Let the years run on now, and watch the long widowhood settle into its final shape, because you are inside it for its whole arc, and the arc is stranger than any single night. By the late 1860s, the country's patience with the invisible Queen has frayed to threads. You see it from the inside out, which is a strange angle to see history from. The newspapers, which reach the servants' hall a day old and dog-eared, grow sharp, then cruel. Someone pins a notice, so the story goes, on the railings of Buckingham Palace, these commanding premises to be let or sold in consequence of the late occupant's declining business, and the story runs through the castle in an afternoon, and half of below stairs is furious, and the other half laughs behind its hand, and both halves are loyal. That is the thing outsiders never understand. Both halves would walk into fire for her. There is talk in London clubs, real talk, of whether the monarchy will see out the century. There are brown pamphlets, filthy ones, calling her Mrs. Brown, and Mrs. Fry burns one she finds below stairs in the closet grate herself, holding it into the flame with the fire tongs at arm's length as if it were a rat. And you, on your nights, keep tending the machine of a court that barely holds courts. Here is a fact for you, one of those facts that says more than a chapter. The Queen's household is still staffed for the full state that the Prince's death abolished. The kitchens that could feed 400 feed 40. The state rooms are kept ready for balls that never come. You dust gilt chairs by lamplight that no guest has warmed in 7 years. It is like crewing a great ship kept forever at anchor with her boilers lit. Some of the young footmen chafe and leave for livelier houses, but there is another way to see it, and night work teaches you that way. The ship is kept ready because readiness is the point. The fires and the lamps and the wound watches are the household's answer to death, the same answer the Queen gives in the Blue Room, not yet. not while we keep it so. Then, slowly in the 70s, the tide turns, and you watch that too from your windows. The Prince of Wales nearly dies of typhoid in the winter of 1871, 10 years almost to the day after his father. The same fever, the same December, and the whole country holds its breath at once, and the near miss burns off the Republican talk like sun on river fog, and the Queen appears with her son at a Thanksgiving at St. Paul's, and the crowds, they say, roared for her for miles. She comes back to Windsor from that, and the castle feels it, a single degree of thaw, no more. But you're a connoisseur of this house's temperatures by now, and a degree is a great deal. The shrines, mind you, never thaw. The blue room water goes up at 9 through all of it, through the jubilees to come, through everything. But around the fixed cold star of that room, life is permitted to creep back in small ways. There are tableaux some winters, the young people acting scenes in costume, and the Queen watches, and once is heard, unmistakably, from behind a door you happen to be passing with your can to laugh. You stop dead in the corridor. It is 14 years since you heard that sound through held breath, a bride's laugh in a corridor smelling of wax. This one is older, deeper, brief, and ends abruptly as if caught doing something forbidden. But it existed. You stand in the dark with your can and find you are smiling like a fool at a shut door. Your own life, meanwhile, has been rising through the house the way water rises in a lock, slow, silent, and certain. Second housemaid in 1868. First housemaid in 1873, when Rose leaves at last, 34 years old, to marry a master baker in Peascod Street, a widower with kind eyes and flower in his eyebrows, and half the below stairs of Windsor Castle crowds the parish church to see Rose married, and Mrs. Fry, retired now to a Grace and Favour cottage and grown small, weeps through the whole service with the satisfaction of a general watching a good campaign end. You inherit Rose's keys, Rose's list, and Rose's sentences, which come out of your own mouth now at new maids. Learn to love this stone girl. It will never carry a tale. The new maids look at you the way you looked at Rose, as something grown from the castle wall itself. 1861 is ancient history to them. The prince is a marble man in a mausoleum they have never seen. You are the one who tells them, on their first night duty, warming their first cocoa, what the bell sounded like, and the straw in the road, and the one note through the stone. You have become the memory. That is the last promotion service gives, and it is not in any ledger, and it is the realest one. You do not marry. You could have. There was a sergeant footman in 1869, a decent man, and a saddler in the town in 1874 who walked you along the river 3 Sundays running, and asked at the 3rd bridge, and you have never regretted the answer you gave either of them, though you've wondered at it. The truth, which you found the words for only late, is that you were already keeping house with your whole heart, and the house was this one, and the family was 600 strong and wore black, and a woman only has so many hearths in her. Your mother grieved over it. Your granddaughter, when she comes, will be your sister's son's child, and will be more yours than anyone's, and will sit on your knee in the almshouse years demanding the Queen. Tell about the Queen, and you will tell her everything except the photograph. And then one evening, because she asks the right question, the photograph too. Before I let you go towards sleep, there are 3 more nights you would want told, because when you are very old, and the granddaughter asks for the best ones, these are the 3 you always reach for in this order, like stones kept in a pocket. The first is the night on the Round Tower. It is the summer of 1867, and the flag sergeant who keeps the great standard and the Union flag that fly from the tower head is laid up with a poisoned thumb, and Sergeant Hale is deputed to see to the halyards after a day of wild wind has fouled them, and Hale's Crimea knee will not love the last ladder, and so, against every regulation ever written, he takes you, because you're on his round anyway, and steady, and light on ladders, and because, he says, "Heh heh heh, the sky's the one thing in this place she doesn't own, and you've earned a look at it." And so at 2 o'clock on a June morning you come up through the trapdoor onto the leads of the round tower of Windsor Castle, the highest point for 20 miles, into a wind washed clean of the earth, and you hold the fouled halyard while Hale clears it, the rope alive in your hands, thrumming, burning one line across your palm that you will keep for a week like a ribbon of honour, and then the work is done and Hale fills his pipe and lets you look. And you look. Below you the whole castle lies unrolled, its courts and towers and the long dark spine of the state apartments, a few windows amber where the night world, your world, is doing its work, and you can name every light. That is Della's boy in the lamp room. That is the Queen's boxes burning late. That is the warm corridor where the flowers are. Beyond the walls the town sleeps in its gaslight, and the river writes its one silver sentence across the dark, over and over, and Eton Chapel stands up grey as a ghost among its playing fields, and beyond all of it, east, low on the world's rim, there is a stain of dull red gold on the underside of the sky that does not flicker and does not fade, and you ask what fire that is, and Hale says, "That's no fire, girl, that's London. The lamps of London, 3 million souls burning coal and gas all night, seen from 20 miles as a permanent false dawn. You stand a long time. The wind pushes at you like a live thing, patient, testing, and you think about the small woman asleep below you, or not asleep, under that whole spread of dark country, hers from this river to the red glow, and then on, past any horizon anyone can climb to, and you understand something on that roof that you never quite find words for, about how the biggest things, empires, griefs, are carried the same way your scuttle is carried, in the end by particular hands, one landing at a time, and the trick of not being broken by the weight is the same trick. The legs, never the back, and set it down clean. The second is the night of the fire that did not happen. Winter of 1875. You are first housemaid doing your last round past midnight, and in the corridor by the library you smell it. Faint, wrong, hot dust and scorch. The smell every Windsor servant is drilled to fear above all smells, and you track it like a hound nose up along the cases to a flue breast where the plaster is warm, too warm, warm as a forehead in fever, and you do not run and you do not scream. You walk fast to Hale's round and peg him early, and within 20 minutes there are men in the roof void with lanterns and wet blankets finding a beam end smouldering against an overdrawn flue. A red seed of catastrophe the size of a bread loaf, hours perhaps from the library, from the Van Dykes, from the whole north front. It is killed with water and axes before 3. No alarm is ever sounded. The Queen sleeps through it. The newspapers never hear of it. It goes into the Clerk of Works book in 4 dry lines. But the master of the household himself comes below stairs 2 days later, an event roughly as common as snow in August, and says to you in front of the servants' hall that Her Majesty's household is obliged to you, and your name, he says, has been mentioned. Mentioned? You, whose whole art was to be invisible, are mentioned. Old Della, 90 that year and past all trimming, laughs till he coughs when you tell him, and says the thing you will repeat to every new maid forever after. 40 years they don't see you, girl, and then one night your nose saves 900 rooms. That's service. Invisible ain't the same as unimportant. Never was. And the third night is the last one, the one you choose to end your working life on, because you were given the choice. And you chose like a servant by the calendar of the house, and not your own. The 14th of December, 1881. 20 years to the night. You are 37, and your knees have begun to speak to you on the stone stairs, and your pension is settled, and the almshouse room in your own village is waiting, and you have told the housekeeper you will go at Christmas, and she has asked gently whether you would wish to be excused the anniversary duty this last time, and you have said, no, ma'am, I would wish the opposite. So at 9 o'clock on the 14th of December, 1881, you carry the water up the private stair for the last time. The can weighs 11 pounds. The groove in your fingers is 40 years deep now, or feels it. The warm corridor smells of violets and fir, as it has smelled every December for 20 years, the smell that Rose said she could find on you in the dark. The page at the door is a boy whose father you trained, and the room, when you enter it, is the room. The fire low and even, the wreaths, the white bust between the beds, calm the way marble is calm. The evening clothes laid out, coat and waistcoat, and the soft ivory gloves one atop the other, for a man now dead as long as he was married. You pour the water. The steam climbs past your face and beads on the cold tiles, exactly as it did the first night, when you were 18 and your heart was in your ears. You change the towels. You take up in your apron 2 fallen petals. You bank the fire, 5 lumps laid by hand, silent. And then, because it is the last time, you allow yourself one thing in 20 years of allowing yourself nothing. You stand for the space of 3 breaths in the middle of the room, and you say, inside yourself, where even Mrs. Fry could not have heard it, "Good night, sir," and you go out and close the door softly, the way every door in that wing has been closed for 20 years, softly, and give the can to the page's boy, whose duty it becomes, and walk down the private stair through the dark castle that you know blind, step by counted step, for the last working night of your life. The years after are village years, and they are good ones, better than you had dared to order. The almshouse room is snug, 1 window, 1 hearth that you keep, out of pure habit, black-leaded like a mirror, so that the rector's wife exclaims over it and you say only, "I was in service, madam," which explains everything in that parish and always will. Your pension comes quarterly and never fails. Rose writes from Peascod Street twice a year in a round baker's wife hand, all grandchildren and flower prices, and you visit once and stand with her at the foot of Castle Hill, looking up at the grey walls in the summer haze. 2 stout, respectable women in good black, and neither of you says anything at all for a while, and then Rose says, "Do you ever miss it?" And you say, "Only at night," and Rose laughs until she has to hold the railing, because it is the truest sentence either of you has ever said. Because you do, only at night. For the rest of your life your body keeps the castle's hours somewhere under its village ones. You wake sometimes at 1 in the morning, at 3, clean awake, listening, and the cottage is silent and the village is silent. No curfew tower, no wind on 200 windows, no far soft doors, and you lie in the dark and walk the north corridor in your mind. step by counted step, past the 4 steps down by the Rubens room, past the wainscot creak you step wide of even in imagination, to the half-landing window, and look at the snow that fell on one particular night in 1862, still falling there, always falling there, and then you sleep. The castle became your other country. Everyone who serves long in a great house has one. They none of them ever quite come home from it, and the wise ones stop trying and keep it the way the Queen kept her room, lit, tended, ready, just so. The news of the world comes to the village a day late, and you read it by your black-leaded hearth. The Golden Jubilee in 1887, the Queen persuaded out at last into an open landau through roaring London, and you study the engraved pictures with a professional eye and think, someone had the ordering of all those horses, and someone carried the water those mornings, and nobody in that whole roaring city knows their names, and that is as it should be, and God keep them on their feet. The Diamond Jubilee 10 years on, an old small woman in black, the same black, your black, riding through an empire's delirium, and the papers say there has never been such love for a sovereign in the history of the world, and you remember the pamphlets Mrs. Fry burned with the fire tongs, and you think, patience, girl, patience is the whole of it, hers and ours. The country came round the way a fever turns at 4 in the morning. You have seen it done in small, and now you have seen it done in great. And then January of 1901, and you are 56 white-haired, and your granddaughter, who is 15 and in her first place as a housemaid herself, God help her and God speed her, comes running up the lane with the newspaper, and you know from her face at 40 yards, and you take the paper and sit down on your own doorstep in the cold, deliberately, the way you sat on the half-landing step twice in your life before, because some news is sat down for, and you read that the Queen is dead at Osborne, 81 years old, her children about the bed, and that she will lie at Windsor. At Frogmore, in the house by the lake, beside him, under the dome, on the marble your 2 blue frozen hands helped wash. In December 1862, 39 years before, the granddaughter finds you crying on the step and is frightened, and you take her cold hand in your cracked one and tell her the thing that stops her fright, which is the truth. These are not sad tears, child. She is with him. It took her 40 years to get down that half-mile of park, and she is with him. And tonight, for the first night since I was younger than you, nobody anywhere needs to carry the water. It is finished, and it was kept, all of it, every single night, and I was one of the ones who kept it. They stop the Blue Room service that year when she dies. The clothes are put away at last, the watch is allowed to run down. 40 years, the papers marvel. 40 years it was done, as if it were curiosity, a madness of the old queens, and you read the clever paragraphs by your fire and feel no anger at them at all, only the mild pity of the traveller for those who have not been to the country she's been to. They think it was about death, the keeping of that room. You carried the water. You know what it was about. It was about the same thing your black-leaded hearth is about, and Rose's loaves, and Hale's pegged clocks, and the flag on the tower, and every fire lit before dawn in every house that was ever kept by anyone. It was somebody saying to the dark with her hands, every single evening, not yet. You do not stop saying it because the dark will win. The dark always wins. You say it because saying it is what love does with its hands. And now, listener, let the castle have you, the way it had her, the way it had me. It is night at Windsor. It is always night at Windsor somewhere in this story, so let it be night now. The gas is turned down to a bead of blue along 200 yards of corridor. The lamps are trimmed, flat and true, and the colzer burns with no smoke at all. The fires are banked, 5 lumps laid by hand, silent, and the coals settle once, softly, like a house sighing, and are still. The mirrors are dark, the flowers are fresh, the doors are closed softly, softly. Sergeant Hale is on his round, peg by peg, clock by clock, and the small yellow eye of his lantern slides along the stone and is gone. Gwen's stockpots murmur in the red cave of the kitchen. Old Della sleeps in his chair in the lamp room with 500 clean chimneys glinting around him like a glass orchard. Up under the leads, in the attic, Annie is arguing gently with her sister, and Patience is dreaming of Devon, and Rose is sleeping like the dead, and there is one bed with a tin box under it holding a paper of pins and a small grey photograph, and the girl in that bed is asleep too. At last her cracked hands open on the coverlet, done for the night. The snow is beginning again over the town, street by street, and the river carries its one silver sentence away toward the red glow of London, and the frost creaks in the grass of the home park, and by the frozen lake the dome stands quiet over the two of them, together, just so. The can is empty, the water is carried. Water. The watch is wound. You've been on your feet a long time, you know, longer than you admit, up and down your own stairs, carrying your own scuttles, keeping your own fires in for the people you keep them for, and no ledger anywhere records the half of it, and it was seen anyway. It was all seen. Invisible was never the same as unimportant. Never was. So set it down now. Set the weight down clean, the legs, never the back, and let go of the handle, and feel the groove in your fingers ease. You are warm enough. You are safe enough. You've done enough. The corridor of your own long day is dark now, and you know it blind, and there's nothing left in it to carry. Let the doors close softly, softly. Let the fires bank themselves down to one red seed that harms nothing and only keeps. Let the bell in the curfew tower drop its last notes down through the cold, one and the long gap, and one slower and slower. The slowest clock in the world, counting the day out kindly. Centuries will pass, the castle will stand. They have wired it for light now that would have blinded old Della, and the trippers come by the million where they came by the 1,000, and other queens and kings have kept it and been kept by it, and the blue room is only a room again, shown to visitors, and no water goes up at 9. But at night, when the last visitor is gone and the great house settles, the stone still holds every soft footstep it ever learned, yours among them, and somewhere in every house in a world tonight, someone is still keeping something just so for someone, a room, a habit, a light in a window, saying to the dark with their hands, not yet, not yet. Some things do not change. The heart does not change. The need, at the end of the long carrying to set the weight down and rest, that does not change either. So let sleep take you now, the way it took a housemaid under the leads of Windsor 160 years ago, with the wind flattening itself against 100 windows and the whole great house breathing slow around her. Let the world fade, let the noise quiet. Let your thoughts slow and soften and finally stop. The night staff have it now. The lamps are theirs, the rounds are theirs, the water is theirs to carry. You have earned this rest. Take it. Good night.